Officer Jake Mills wasn't just a cop. He was the symbol of integrity in the Cedar Creek Police Department. For 10 years, his name commanded respect, his badge carried pride, and the community adored him. Cedar Creek wasn't a big city, but it was a place where the streets whispered about Jake's bravery. He had taken down violent gangs, uncovered drug rings, and saved more lives than anyone could count. But things started changing when he became involved with the Pinnacle Group, a shady company that had its hands in every corner of the city. The first time Jake encountered the Pinnacle Group was when they were sponsoring a local charity event. Jake had questions about how they suddenly started appearing at every major community event, but no one else seemed to mind. The CEO, Tom Anderson, was charming and generous, always smiling, always ready to lend a hand. But there was something unsettling about how he operated. Deals were made behind closed doors, and Jake had seen a few officers, like his old friend Ronnie Langston, becoming friendlier with Anderson. Soon, there were rumors about bribes and corruption. Jake always turned the other cheek. He had built his reputation by being honest, and part of him believed he could keep it that way. But the pressure was growing. The department was underfunded. His fellow officers had started accepting favors from Anderson, and Ronnie, once his most trusted friend, seemed to be living lavishly. When Jake refused to join them, he was left behind, pushed out of important cases, and his opinions were disregarded. It was only a matter of time before the temptation wore him down. The breaking point came one cold evening. A young boy named Billy Jenkins had been shot in a drive-by near his school. It was a tragic case, the kind that broke Jake's heart. The streets were crying for justice, but the deeper Jake dug, the more he realized the trail led straight back to the Pinnacle Group. He confronted Tom Anderson directly, accusing him of having connections to the killers. But Anderson didn't flinch. Instead, he offered Jake a choice. "Take the money and keep quiet," Anderson said, sliding an envelope filled with cash across the table. Jake hesitated. His family needed the money. The department had turned their back on him, and he was tired of fighting a losing battle. So, for the first time in his life, Officer Jake Mills made a decision he'd regret forever. He took the money. That night, Jake became someone else. He no longer chased justice. Instead, he became a shadow of the man he once was, burying evidence, turning a blind eye to the crimes of the Pinnacle Group, and falling deeper into the trap of corruption. But the streets have long memories, and soon, whispers began spreading. Officer Mills wasn't the hero he once was. The very people he had sworn to protect began to fear him. The man who had once stood for justice was now a pawn in a dangerous game. As weeks turned into months, Jake's transformation became more apparent. He now drove a brand new car, his house was upgraded, and his wife, Lisa, couldn't stop asking where all the money was coming from. Jake would shrug it off, saying, "I've been working hard. Promotions come with perks." But deep inside, he knew that his soul was rotting from the inside. Ronnie Langston was the one who dragged Jake deeper into the Pinnacle's web. "Look, Jake," Ronnie said one night at the station, "we all do what we have to survive. You're no different than the rest of us." But Jake was different once. He used to care, used to fight for what was right. Now, he only fought for himself. The Pinnacle Group had eyes everywhere. Soon, Jake was instructed to take part in more brutal operations. Evictions of poor families, covering up violent crimes for high-paying clients, and, worst of all, silencing witnesses who dared speak out. Every job came with more money, but also more shame. Jake would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he could ever find a way out. Then came the tipping point. One afternoon, while patrolling a quiet neighborhood, Jake saw something he couldn't ignore. It was Billy Jenkins' mother, Mary Jenkins. She had been relentless in her quest to find out who killed her son, but no one would listen. As Jake watched her stand in front of City Hall, holding a sign that read, "Justice for Billy," something inside him snapped. He remembered that boy, his smile, and how the community had rallied after his death. Jake had promised himself to solve the case, but instead, he had taken Anderson's money and buried the evidence. Mary's eyes caught his, and for the first time in months, Jake felt a flicker of the man he once was. But it was too late for redemption. The Pinnacle Group had their claws deep into him, and leaving meant more than just losing his job. It meant his life was in danger. Still, Jake couldn't shake the guilt. Every time he saw Mary Jenkins, he was reminded of the boy he had failed. That's when Ronnie Langston delivered the final blow. "The Jenkins woman needs to be dealt with," Ronnie said coldly. "Anderson wants her gone." Jake had never crossed that line before. He had covered up crimes, turned a blind eye, and accepted bribes, but taking a life, especially the life of a grieving mother, was too much for him. He knew if he followed through with this order, he would be lost forever. But if he refused, the Pinnacle Group would turn on him. He had seen what happened to those who tried to leave. That night, Jake drove to Mary Jenkins' house on the quiet streets. He sat in his car, gripping the steering wheel, thinking about everything he had done. Billy's face haunted him. Could he go through with it? Could he really take this woman's life? As he sat there, a police cruiser pulled up beside him. It was Officer Emma Rooks, a young cop who had recently joined the force. She had heard stories about Jake, the legend he once was, but now saw the broken man he had become. "Everything okay, Officer Mills?" Emma asked. Jake nodded, but Emma wasn't convinced. She had been watching him for weeks, noticing the changes, the dark circles under his eyes, and the way he avoided everyone. Emma was smart, and she had started digging into the Pinnacle Group, slowly uncovering their web of corruption. "I know what's going on, Jake," Emma said. "You don't have to do this. There's still time to make things right." Jake's heart sank. He knew she was right. He couldn't go through with it, but he also couldn't escape the life he had chosen. The only way out was to bring the Pinnacle Group down. But that meant going against Ronnie, Anderson, and everything he had become. The next morning, Jake walked into the Cedar Creek Police Department and handed over every piece of evidence he had on the Pinnacle Group. He confessed to his crimes, his involvement, and the cover-ups. It was the hardest thing he had ever done, but for the first time in a long time, he felt free. Ronnie Langston was arrested, along with several other officers involved in the corruption. Tom Anderson, the mastermind behind it all, was finally brought to justice. As for Jake, he faced trial, but his cooperation earned him a lighter sentence. The once respected cop had fallen, but in the end, he chose justice. Mary Jenkins never knew how close she had come to death, but she did know one thing: her son's killer was finally behind bars. Thank you for watching till the end. I hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends too. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating stories. Have a nice day.